Hi and welcome to this DCP web tutorial. In today's tutorial we're going to use Blender 2.8 to create this volumetric light animation. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up Blender. And we'll click General like usual, and we'll middle mouse click and rotate around the side. I'm just going to press here and just turn on my screencast key so you can see what keys I'm pressing down here. I'm going to go to File, Save As. I just want to save my work here. Let's just save this. So the first thing we're going to do is scale this cube. In fact, we can click on the light source and delete that. We don't need this light source. So let's click on this cube, and on the x-axis I'm going to set it to the x scale. I'm going to set it to 20, and then on the z scale I'm going to set it to 10. So it's 10 by 20. So I've got this wall here like this, right? And then on the y I'm going to set it to 0.3. It's going to be quite thin, yeah, something like this. Let's press number 1. That takes us into the front orthographic. Press Control Alt and 0, and that moves the camera to the front view here. And we're going to move our camera a bit forward slightly. So let's just click here, click on the camera, and set the Z here rotation to 0, and just move it forward slightly to around here, just so that the wall is covering the full size of the camera view, and we can adjust that later as well. So the first thing we really want to do is cut out these sort of little circles, right? So you can use any type of shape, but in this example I think we'll use a icosphere. It's got some like a few angles there. It's got, rather than it just being a perfect circle, it's got some shape to it, right? And we want to set the X, the Y and the Z scale to 0.7. So it's quite a small circle like this. And what we'll do now is let's press number 1. That takes us into the front orthographic, and we want to replicate this object. But before we replicate it, let's just go into our let's just do this in, let's see, we'll go into solid view and we turn on our x-ray here, and that just allows us to see through this object and we can see the grid behind. And we want to click on this icosphere and press G to grab it, then press X to lock it on the x-axis, hold down the control key, and we're going to drag it to this point here. It's almost like little 2 blocks in right on this dot here, this point here. And now we're going to use the array modifier to replicate it. So let's go to the modifiers, add modifier, array modifier, and we want to set the offset here to around 1.6. yeah, let's just see. Let's bring it back maybe 1 to 1.5. yeah. In fact, let's make them a bit wider. Let's widen it out a bit. Let's set it to let's see, around 2.3. I think will be fine. So we want a bit of a gap in between them rather than them being very, very close. And then we can just use the count here to replicate them across. And you're going to get to the end here. You can see they're not quite even. So you can use the constraint offset and you can just reduce it slightly so that they sit roughly in the same position. So the gap here and the gap on this side are going to be quite even. Let's just zoom in here a little bit. I want to move this across a little bit, so let's just move it across to around here. It doesn't have to be perfect, but try and get it even. So you can see they're evenly spaced across. So that's pretty good. It's not perfect, but it doesn't need to be perfect because it's going to have a quite dark background, and we're going to replicate this a few times anyway. So let's go ahead and click apply. And the next thing we're going to do is move these icospheres upwards. So we press G to grab them, and you can see the blue line, which is the Z axis. So let's press Z to lock it on the Z axis, hold down the control key, and we'll drag it up to here, into this position here. We'll leave a bit of a gap around the edge here, yeah? And we'll go back to the array modifier. So let's click modifier, click here and go back to the array modifier, and you can see it's going to replicate them to the side. We don't want that, so let's set this value to 0, and then we want to array modify downwards. So we want to increase the Y value, the Z value here, should I say, and we're going to give it a bit of a gap. So we want to set it to around 2, value of 2, and then we'll just replicate these down, and then we can again use the constraint here just to even them out. So we bring it up a little bit to, let's see, around here. So they're just roughly the gap at the top and the bottom is going to be, I just like things to be evened out. You don't have to, but you know, let's just try and make it as accurate as possible. Let's click apply, and if we middle mouse click, now we've got these spheres buried inside of this object. Now the objective of creating these spheres is to cut holes out of this object. If you have to cut one out each individual one, you'll be there for a long time, right? So using the ray modifier, we can replicate an object many times in different directions, and then we can use that as a cutting tool to cut these icospheres or these circles out of this object. So let's click on the wall. Let's click on the wall. Let's actually call it a wall. Would be nice. Let's call it a wall. And what we want to do now is click on the wall, go to the array modifier, go to the modifier, click add modifier and Boolean here. When we click that, in the object we want to select the icosphere. It's going to cut, use these icospheres to cut these circles out. So let's click apply, and then we can see, you can't really see the cutouts yet because the icospheres are still in the viewport, you can still see them. So let's click here, up here, and select this option here, disable in render. So we'll click there and then click down, and we want to disable this first one. Will disable it in the viewport, and the second one will disable it when you render it out. So if I press F12 now, you'll still see the icospheres. If I turn off this camera or disable in render, then they'll actually be removed from the render as well, and that's what we want. We want to remove them from the render as well. So let's left click here, and we want to duplicate this object. So let's press 0, or let's in fact press number 1, and we want to select this object, go back to the modifier, add modifier, and we want to go back to the array modifier, and you can see it's already replicated it once to the side, and we want to replicate it probably at least 4 times, right? 4. So we'll set it to 4 and click apply, and then we're going to select this object and press G to grab it, and then press X, and we're going to center it out. So just center it out here. Hold down the control key when you drag it and it will move in increments. You can see it's right in the middle now. Let's select it again and go back to the let's go back to the array modifier. Let's go back to the modifier for this large object. Go to the modifier, add modifier, and array modifier. Now it's going to replicate it to the side, and we don't want that, so let's set this value to 0, and we want to replicate it on the Z axis. So let's do this, and we're going to set it to, let's see, we want an even number, right? 1 2 3 4 5 6. Let's just do 6 for now, and click apply, and then we can click this, press G to grab, then Z, and drag it down so it's centered out here. Now when we look at through our camera, we've got all of these circles surrounding. If we were to move our camera to the side, we won't really see. You can move it a little bit up and down, and you can play around with the lighting this way. I think it's a good way to do this. So let's just zoom out. Let's press number 7. That takes us into the top view. I'm going to go and save this. Press Shift and A, and we want to insert a light spotlight. So the spotlight is pointing downwards. If I rotate around, you'll see it's pointing downwards. We don't want that, but let's move it backwards first. Let's press G to grab, and then we want to press Y to lock it on the Y axis. Yeah, and we want to move it behind the wall because our camera is down here. You can see our little camera here. Let's select this object, and we want to rotate it on the Z axis. Not on the Z, we want to rotate it on the X axis. So we've got the spotlight. Let's rotate it -90. So now it's facing the wall. Let's press number 7, and we're going to just move this slightly forwards. So we can just move it here on the Y here. We want to get it pretty close to the wall, right? Not touching it, but very, very close. So we set it to 24. It'll be very close. Okay, so we want to go to the render view. So let's go to render view, and let's press 0 so we can see what our camera sees. Let's click on the spotlight, go to its settings, and set the color. So let's set it to like an orange color. You can pick any colors you like, right? So it's entirely your choice. I'm going to set it to orange, and the specular, I'm going to turn that all the way off, and I'm going to set the power to, for now I'm going to set it to quite a high value, like 25,000, and I'm going to click on the wall. This is our wall. I'm going to go to the material, and I'm going to set the base color to black, and then I want to turn the specular all the way off and turn the roughness all the way up. Okay, let's go to our shading. here, press 0 in the top section here so you can see what the camera sees, and we want to go into world settings, and let's just zoom in here, and let's press Shift and A and go to shader, volume scatter. So Shift and A and select, let me do that one more time. So I'm going to press Shift and A and then go to shader and volume scatter and connect the volume to here and set its density to 0.015 and set this value here to 0.8, and let's go into our render view, and now you can see the shards of light coming through. So let's go back to our layout, and what we will do is press number 7. That will take us back into the top view. Let's click this object, this spotlight. Let's press Shift and D to duplicate it once, twice, press it again, Shift and D 3 times, Shift and D 4 times, and then finally Shift and D 5 times. So we should have 6 of these objects. Do we need 6? Let's see. Probably we only need 2 on each side, right? So this one here we can actually delete it. Let's right click and delete. Let's click on this first spotlight. So we've got the main spotlight that's going to be in the middle, yeah? This one's always going to stay in the center. Let's click this one, and let's go into our solid view. We can see things a little bit clearer. Click this one, press G to grab, then X, and then hold down the control key and drag it to here. So it's got like a gap in between. Let's click on the other spotlight. Let's press G to grab, then X, and drag it to the other side, the opposite side. And we'll click on this one, press G to grab, then X, and drag it over here. So we'll leave it like a gap here. Click on this one, press G to grab, then X, and drag it over here. So we're just evenly spacing them out. And we want to click on this one, go to its settings, and on the Z axis we want to rotate this 20, I think around 22 degrees. Around 22, in fact let's set it to 22.5. 22.5, select this one, set it to minus 22.5. So you can see they're angled in like this. And then this one we want to set it to, let's do this manually and see roughly where we want it to be. Probably around here, which is minus 45. So let's set it to minus 45, and then this one on this side set it to positive 45. So you can see they're all angled in like this. And if we go back into our render view, and if we press 0, we can see the light sources getting pushed through at different angles. And let's click on the first spotlight, go to its settings, and let's set this to 50,000. So you can see it's going to be much brighter now. And let's go to this light source, this one here, and we can probably leave that at around 30,000. In fact, let's set it to around 35,000. So it's going to be a bit brighter. Let's click here and change its color. Let's go for maybe like a purple, and then on this one, which is the opposite side, we want to set that to 35,000 as well. Let's even them out, make them all the same, 35, and then change its color and pick a different color. Use different colors here, right? And if we zoom out a little bit, we can see the ones on the side here. So let's click this one on the left. Let's set its value to 60,000. It's going to be quite bright, but because it's further away from the camera, you won't see it as much. And we want to check this one to like a green color, and then this one here on this side, let's set that to 60,000, and we want to set its color to something else as well. Maybe we'll go for like let's go for like a red color. And we want to change our camera, so let's click on the camera, let's click here, and we want to zoom out a little bit more to see more of this here. So I'm setting it to around 25mm, right? 25mm. Let's just zoom in here, and we can see what we can see now. And if we middle mouse click and rotate around, you can now see the effect that you're going to get, right? You don't want to rotate too far off because you're going to see like the edge in here. But what you can actually do is go to the world settings and set the background to black, and then you won't really see that. So you can now rotate around. You can get these really nice colors, something like this. So let's just test that by going into the camera and pressing F12, so we can do a quick render. You can see what it looks like in here. And if we go to the render settings and go to volumetric, really we should set the tile size to 2 and set the render settings to 128, and we can set the viewport to 128 for now as well. And one thing I wanted to try, I'm not sure how what will happen, but let's just see. Shadows is on here, right? So you need to leave shadows on, because if you turn shadows off, you're going to get this like blowout effect here. I mean, you might want that, but I think with shadows on, it's going to look better, right? So you're going to see all this light. And if you get quite close with the camera, you can do some really nice effects. So if you had some sort of logo in front of this and you started rotating around at an angle, obviously you don't want to go too far because you're going to see the back here. So you want to rotate maybe like at this sort of angle around, something like this. So let's try and do a quick animation. What we'll do is go to our camera. We've got 250 frames. We're going to run it at 30 frames a second. So let's go to our output. Let's set it to 30 frames a second. And what we'll do is go to the end here. And let's see, 30, so it'll be around 8 seconds. This duration should be enough. And what we'll do is hit the record button. We've got our camera selected. Let's go to frame 45, so it's about a second and a half. Let's go to the camera settings here. Press I and I here to insert keyframes. Let's go to the first frame here. Press I and I here. And we want to move the camera forward first. So I want to move it to almost where it's black. You don't really see anything. In fact, let's move it backwards a little bit so we can see some of the lights. And then we want to rotate it on the y-axis. Let's rotate it around, let's say around 45 degrees, like this. And then we can move it forward because we can see the rotation happen. So now when we move it forward on the black frame, to a black frame, let's get it to around here. When we click play, it's going to like, let's play from the beginning. It's going to rotate around like this. So from 45 to let's say 100, this sort of duration, maybe we'll rotate the camera to the side. So if you go to edit, preferences, go into key map, let's see, key map here, search for fly, and then just make sure the settings for this particular option is set to Shift and F. So click in here, press the Shift key and F, and then click outside, and now you can move the camera with your mouse. So if you press Shift and F, let's just turn off my alarm. Let's press Shift and F, and we're just going to rotate the camera to the left, right? Let's just move it to the left. Maybe we'll move it up slightly, and then press Shift and F, and let's rotate the mouse wheel forward so we can like zoom into here. So now you'll see the camera sort of rotate like this. You can play around with this and do all sorts of stuff, right? And maybe what we'll do is rotate it on an angle a little bit here as well. Let's see, let's rotate it down a little bit. And here you can have a lot of fun, right? Because it's just light, so it doesn't really matter where you rotate stuff. It's going to look all pretty cool. And then we'll go to frame 200. Let's just press the letter I here and here. And I want to press Shift and F and roll my mouse wheel forward again. And then I'm going to press Shift and F and move the mouse over to this sort of direction, or the camera. Let's move it a bit more so we can see more of that red light. And I want to rotate again, so let's press, you can actually just press R to rotate and then Y, and you can rotate it around here. And then press G to grab and move the camera down a little bit to maybe around here somewhere, so we get some nice lighting here. And then finally we want to try and probably what we'll do is rotate this camera. Let's see, on the y-axis, let's rotate it to 0, so it's straight again. And then on the z-axis, let's rotate that to 0, so it's facing forward. And we'll probably just move the camera forward. So let's go to Y and move it forward to around here. And while it's moving, let's just bring it back a little bit. Let's just rotate it on the, let's see, rotate it on the Y. We want to rotate on the Y axis here. Let's just rotate it around 90 degrees or whatever you want to rotate it, maybe a little bit less, and move it forward. And then turn off the record button. Let's go back to the first frame, click play. You kind of get an understanding of how that camera movement is going to work. And if you had your logo in here or some other sort of object, and you've got this nice lighting working, you can see how it's all working now, right? Something like this. So you can experiment. I'll leave you to play around with the camera settings and just experiment with how you want to move the camera through the scene. But you've got the volumetric lighting working. I think it looks pretty cool. It's really easy to do actually. It's not that difficult to understand. You can, it didn't have to be circles cut out from this object. You could cut out shape of your logo if you wanted to. You can cut out loads of different things, and maybe we'll make some more tutorials. Maybe I'll show you how to cut out some text. So we can cut out some text from this background, and then maybe the light can shine and you'll see like the silhouette of the text. That could be quite an interesting tutorial to do maybe in the future. So let's pause this. I'm going to render this out. So let's go to File, Save, and we'll go to our output settings, and I'm going to set it to AVI JPEG, right? AVI JPEG here, and we'll click the open folder, and let's just go to our lighting folder here, click accept, and we'll just press Control and F12, and our Blender is going to render out each frame individually, and I'll pause the video for now. Okay, so Blender's finished rendering out all of the 250 frames. Let's close this window, go to File, Save, and we'll minimize this for the moment, and let's just open this folder on my desktop, and we can see the AVI file here it's created. Let's just open that and watch it a few times, and we'll work out if we can improve this in any way. I like the lighting effect. I like the volumetric effect that you have. If you were to put your logo in front of this and maybe have your logo animated in some way, and you have these lights in the background, that could look pretty cool. You could try another version of this, but the holes, the circles, could be a different shape, like a square shape. Or what you could do is make them more dense, so don't have them spaced out as wide, and maybe make them a lot smaller, and you'll get these shards of light coming out at finer points, and that might look pretty cool as well. Probably I would have used less colors. It does look nice, don't get me wrong, but maybe there's just too many different colors in this scene. But I like the way the lights cross over each other and generate new colors as well when they blend together. You can kind of see that here where the lights are overlapping, right? The purple and the green, and I think you get some really nice effects here. I think it's pretty cool, quite a cool effect. So it's really for you to now go and experiment with this. I wouldn't say this was the best animation in terms of camera movement, but I wanted to try and illustrate the light movement as well. The way like the light will move depending on the camera, right? You can see that quite clearly there on the green. So that's really what I was trying to illustrate, especially here where it moves up towards the camera lens. It's orange, and then you've got the blues and the reds over there. So I reckon you could create some really good stuff out of this if you start experimenting with it. So let's close this down. I'm quite happy with that, and that's the end of this tutorial, and I look forward to seeing you in the next DCP Web tutorial.